Hi everyone, I am here today with this week's weekly reading wrap up, and oh my goodness am I having a fantastic reading year so far. So since I last spoke to you about my reading last Wednesday, I managed to read 8 books. I know, that is amazing for me. 8 books. 4 of those are audiobooks, and I'm not gonna lie, some of these books in general are quite short, but still 8 books for me in 1 week is just absolutely fantastic, so let's get to it. The first book I finished this week was 5 on Treasure Island, and that was by Enid Blyton, and this was an audiobook, and this was just absolutely fantastic. I read some famous 5 books when I was younger, but I can't remember which ones, and I can't remember how I felt about them, and don't really remember much about them. I remember a little bit more about The Secret 7, so when I get around to reading those again, I'm sure some of those will come back to me. But the famous 5, nothing was coming back to me at all. It was like a brand new reading experience, and listening to it as an audiobook worked fantastically. So if you're looking for a quick audiobook, something new, something quick but enjoyable and easy to follow, then this might be a great one for you to pick up. Needless to say, I gave this book 5 stars. If you're not aware of the Famous 5, Famous 5 is basically a group of children made up of a girl named George. Her real name is Georgina, but she's a bit of a tomboy and prefers to be called George. Her dog Timmy, and then we have 3 siblings called Julian, Dick and Anne. And you can sort of tell by the names that this is a very old book. Enid Blyton's works are classics, they're all the same, and the names were innocent back then and so should be treated as such now. And in this story, it is the first book in the series, so in this book, the children meet George and indeed Timmy for the first time. The parents send their children away to visit George and to spend some time at her house while they go away separately somewhere else. And so the children meet for the first time and they have adventures like children back then did. And George takes them to a treasure island that is apparently hers by inheritance. This is a really wonderful story where you just enjoy it for what it was. A little bit of entertainment where you've got children having a good time, exploring the outdoors like children used to do years and years ago, and it's just a great read. I highly recommend it. I'm going to be continuing on with the series, of course. So the second book I finished last week was also an audiobook, and that is called The Boy Who Could Do What He Liked, and that is by David Baddiel. And this one was released for World Book Day in the UK 2016. It was a World Book Day book, so it's quite short. It's meant to be accessible to children, something to help get them into reading if they're not normally a reader. It clocks in at 128 pages, so like I said, it's a quick read. I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I didn't necessarily think that it was anything amazing, but I thought that it was worth the listen. I was glad that I'd picked this up. It was just really entertaining. I'm sure it's something that could be analysed on a much deeper level. It's not something I did with it though, it was more something I just listened to for a bit of entertainment while I was cooking. And it fulfilled anything that I needed it to do in that sense. And this just follows the story of Alfie, who is very set in his routines. He enjoys living upon routine. He needs that structure in his life, and when a routine gets messed up, it doesn't really suit his personality. It makes him feel uncomfortable. And so one day he ends up with a babysitter that doesn't stick to his routines because it's a different babysitter. And he has to try and function without these routines, and this is about his adventure within that experience. And as I say, I enjoyed it, and I will probably at some point, if I'm looking for another quick children's type read, will keep an eye out for other things by that author, but it's not something I'm going to be seeking out instantly. By the way, do you like my new pug mug? I love pugs. So the next book I finished was the 7th book in the series of Unfortunate Events series, and that is The Vile Village by, of course, Lemony Snicket, aka Daniel Handler. And for me, this one was quite different. It had quite a darker tone to it. The children again get sent to someone to be their guardian, only this time, instead of having an individual one person looking after them, they get sent to a village where the village want to look after children as a whole. They don't have a specific guardian, the whole village is going to be their guardian. And this one, like I said, it had a darker tone to it, and it was a little bit longer, and the storyline was starting to develop a bit more in places. I found it enjoyable. I gave it 4 stars, and it really deepens the whole mystery sort of level on this one. I can't say too much because obviously it's the 7th book in the series and we're getting to the point where there would just be massive spoilers, but I like the direction that this one started taking things in. It started to feel more like YA rather than children's. And then on from there, the next book I finished last week was the 8th book in the series, and this one is called The Hostile Hospital. And this one is the first book where the children actually take charge of their own lives. They no longer have a guardian because of the events in the last book, so I really can't say too much on this one, but they no longer have a guardian and they are taking charge of their own lives. Again, this one is longer still. It starts to begin with deeper storylines about how there is no such thing necessarily as good and bad, and there are shades of grey in between all of that, and that sometimes you have to do certain things to achieve certain things, and it doesn't necessarily make you a bad person. It's just how, I suppose it's just how the world works as much as anything. The children are learning more about the world and how everything works, and that it's a bad place out there, but at the same time there are good people all the same. And I thoroughly enjoyed this one. I loved the direction it went in. I loved how the mystery side of things deepened even more. I gave this book 5 stars. Then the next book I finished was book 9 in the series of unfortunate events, which is called The Carnivorous Carnival. And this one I gave 4 stars to because I enjoyed it a lot. I didn't necessarily like the setting of the place they were in, although it introduced some really interesting new characters and an even deeper level of mystery. And this one ends on a ridiculous cliffhanger. And I wanted to keep reading this series because of this cliffhanger, but at this point I felt like I needed a little bit of a break. So from this one, which I enjoyed thoroughly, instead of picking up the 10th book, I picked up another audiobook instead. And this was Happy Days by Ollie Murs. And this is one of his autobiographies. It's his first one. And the audiobook is read by Ollie himself, so if you're an Ollie Murs fan, this is worth picking up just to be able to listen to Ollie talk to you for like 2 or 3 hours. It was fantastic. I gave this 5 stars. I absolutely love Ollie Murs. I've seen him live once, and yeah, I thought he was a fantastic entertainer, but I've got such a deeper level of respect for him after listening to this audiobook, because you learn about his life before he ever went on the X Factor. Like, I didn't know that he auditioned for the X Factor 3 times in total. But you follow him doing that, you follow his progress on the X Factor, you follow his progress as he starts to get towards having his first tour, he discusses his first album, and you get all the early stuff, basically, the stuff that I didn't necessarily know about. And it's such an impressive journey that he went on, and I feel like he's such a person to admire because he really teaches you that you should chase for your dreams in this book and that you shouldn't give up. And yeah, like I said, I love this book. Highly recommend it to any Ollie Murs fans. Then I picked up another audiobook, and that was The Tales of Max Carados by Ernest Brammer. And the audiobook is narrated by Stephen Fry, who is just such a fantastic audiobook narrator. I feel like he needs to narrate most of the audiobooks I listen to because he is just so capable of making himself sound like you just want to listen to him. I just couldn't turn him off, literally just had to leave him on all the time. Like, I was listening to it anywhere and everywhere. It's only a short one anyway, so I flew through this one. I've got to say, I only actually gave this audiobook 2 stars, but I don't feel that was necessarily a bad thing. It was a free audiobook, I wasn't expecting an awful lot from it, and as a result, the story was a little bit dull in places. And this is just a fictional detective series that is sort of similar in tone to sort of Sherlock Holmes, but yeah, as I said, it was a pleasurable listen because Stephen Fry made it, quite frankly. I'm not sure I'd have enjoyed it very much at all if it had been a different narrator, but the story was okay and the narrator was excellent. 2 stars. If you're looking for a free audiobook, this one ticked a decent box. It wasn't bad, it just wasn't thrilling. And so the final book I've got to talk to you about today is one that I picked up on a real spur of the moment. Now, I've had this book for quite a while. I received it from the publisher Sourcebooks via NetGalley in return for an honest review, and I'd had it sat on my Kindle for a while, and I kept thinking I need to get around to that book, I need to get around to it, but I'm so bogged down, and as you know, my motto for this year is just read what you want, and so I wasn't going to push myself to read it until I was ready. Aoife over at Fred Weasley Died Laughing read it, and she actually really hated this book, and one of the main characters in it, she despised that character actually, and her negative thoughts on it and her sharing her sort of written review with me really made me want to go and pick this book up. It's a classic example of how there is no such thing as a bad review with books. A negative review can just as easily spur someone to pick a book up as a positive review. And actually, my reading experience was totally different to hers. So while she gave this book 1.5 stars, I gave this book 5 stars. And the book that I'm on about is The 100 Lies of Lizzie Lovett by Chelsea Sidoti. And yeah, I can see Aoife's issues with this book. I understand where her problems lie with it, but at the same time I just took a completely different angle on it, and I feel like this is going to be a real Marmite book for people. It came out the beginning of January, and so it's not been out very long at all, and I'm not sure whether I would necessarily recommend it to everyone, but I feel like I'd recommend it to most people. It is a YA contemporary that has got a mystery aspect in it, and maybe that's why I loved it a bit more. I've not really picked up many YA contemporaries, so I've not got an awful lot to compare it to. But it follows the story of Hawthorne, and basically someone that she knows at school, who was a couple of years above her, named Lizzie Lovett, has gone missing. And she's taken it upon her obsessed self, because she truly becomes obsessed with Lizzie and her life, and she takes it upon her obsessed self to find out what happened to her. And some of the things that get discussed in this book are a bit and for a little while, the first 20, maybe even 30%, I was like, whoa, God, where is this going? I had a really bad feeling that I could understand all of a sudden the hatred. I was like, I don't like where this is going at all. And it all went a bit, for those of you that are older, or those of you that are more in the know, I'm going to say it all went a bit Twin Peaks for a while there. But it regained it, and my overall thought for this book was just wow. Which is totally different to what Aoife thought. But I was like, wow, okay, there is a real message behind this book. And without ruining anything with the plot, I don't want to go into any spoilers at all, but for me the real message in this book is that there are some messed up people out there, because one of the characters, I can't even begin to imagine why a 25-year-old would want to hang around with a 17-year-old. We will get that out there right now. I can understand why Aoife has a problem with that, but at the same time I feel like that was part of the story, that was part of the point that the author is trying to make, that this guy was broken. And it definitely wasn't a good thing what he does with Hawthorne, the way he hangs out with her, the way that he lets her down in some situations, and the things that happen. But at the same time, it teaches you that there are some broken people out there. And I truly wonder why he didn't have a support network at all. He seemed to have no other friends or family. He comes across as quite a bit of a loner, and I think that that was the point the author was trying to actually make with him. Meanwhile, Lizzie, I think the real story and message that the author is trying to get through with Lizzie is that, how to say stuff without spoiling, but basically, just because you look like your life is going a certain way to other people, like you are looking at other people's lives and thinking, oh, their life is so perfect because of this, or their life is so perfect because of that, their life is wonderful, blah, 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 blah. What you are seeing is not necessarily what they are actually living. You're only seeing a small snippet of whenever you see this person. Unless it's someone you spend 24/7 with, you are only ever seeing a small snippet of a person's life when you see them. You don't know what is really going on in their heads, for starters, like whether there is any mental health issues. You don't know what is going on in their personal lives. You don't know what is going on just in their everyday life, at home, at work, at school, whatever. You never properly know what is going on with someone. And I thought that was a really clever angle to take with this book. As well, also, Hawthorne definitely deals with severe levels of obsession. She just becomes obsessed with Lizzie. I was getting so annoyed with Hawthorne. She is not a pleasant person at times. She is very, very, very self-absorbed and very, very, very absorbed in Lizzie, and anything else just she doesn't give a toss, quite frankly. And that is a really awful thing to read. She is really aggravating. There were many times I wanted to throw my Kindle out the window. I don't think I've ever actually felt that strongly about a book to the point where I wanted to throw it out the window, but at the same time I'm absolutely loving it, can't put it down, and give it 5 stars. Like, that is a really weird experience for me, but it is one that I treasured. I don't want to go too much more into details with this book now, because I'm going to do a full review for this one, which you can see later this week. I'm thinking possibly Saturday night I'll get that uploaded. So yeah, I think that this is a very Marmitey book and that some people are going to hate it, but at the same time there is a message there. I feel there's a message there anyway. That's the way I read it, and I read this message as a positive thing, and I just absolutely loved this book. It was a debut novel by the author, but I would definitely keeping my eye out for future novels from this author. So that is everything that I read this week. I just want to quickly show you my colouring as ever at the end of this wrap up. So I finished this page. I'm so happy with it. I think it looks absolutely fantastic. It's so bright and colourful, and oh, it's just wonderful. And I've moved on to my new colouring book. I've done the first page. Now, because I've never read Fantastic Beasts and I've still not seen the movie, I don't know who this is. I don't know what this is in any way, shape or form. I don't know what it's meant to look like. I don't know what colouring it is. I did try and have a little Google, but when you don't know the name of the creature, that also makes it quite tricky. So I just made the colouring up. I don't know what colour this creature is meant to be. I've decided it's a very cute creature. It looks adorable. And so I've just gone for that colouring. I'm quite pleased with it. I don't know what it's meant to look like. I don't care. I'm happy with my version. And so that is that page finished as well. So I'm not sure where I'm going to go with my colouring from here. I've got so many colouring books and I like to just work through them in order and pick a different one each time. So I'm going to pick up a new colouring book the next time I do some colouring, and you will see that and any progress next week. As for what I want to read during the next week, I still need to finish off the series of unfortunate events because as I said, I left it on that cliffhanger, but I really felt like reading Lizzie, Lovett, so I went for it. So I'm going to read the last few books in the series. I'm still working my way through The Hobbit. I've read a little bit more, so I feel like I'm making progress at least, and I'm starting to enjoy it a little bit. Only a little bit, but we're getting there. And as I said, in my last wrap up, I'm going to try and finish Night Film, The Rosie Project, and ideally also The Rosie Effect. And as for audiobooks, I've nearly finished my current audiobook, which is Northern Lights by Philip Pullman. I read this book when I was younger, and I thought I could remember quite a bit about it, but then I started listening to the audiobook and I was like, wait a minute, actually there's loads of this stuff that I either didn't pick up on when I was a lot younger, or I just don't ever remember even reading. So I'm enjoying it. I'm not sure I'm going to give it yet. I've still got about 20% or so to go. But yeah, watch out for that in next week's wrap up because that would definitely be coming. So thank you so much for watching this very long, slightly poorly lighted video. I couldn't film in the day, so I'm having to use terrible artificial lighting. So if you've made it this far, thank you so much. Please let me know what you have read during the last week. I would love to know. Have you read any of these books? Share your thoughts with me on any of them. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more book reviews and other bookish content from me. And I will see you on Friday with my... What video was I going to do Friday? I will see you on Friday with probably my least favourite reads of 2016, which might be quite a long one. I might have to limit that to just 1-star reads, otherwise I might be there a while. So yeah, I will see you Friday. Bye bye!